I'd like to return to your analysis of devotion to the teacher or attachment to the teacher. And I want to thank you for, I think that very precise unpacking of that is extremely helpful to me and probably many other people. And I think it's an important issue for some of us. I want to make sure that I understand it clearly. I've had plenty of opportunity to see in the contemporary spiritual world all of the dynamics that you described. And I guess what I'm trying to understand is whether that sort of, whether what you described is a corruption, an unskillful version of guru devotion, or whether that whether what is presented as a path of devotion centered on a teacher, on a guru, whether that is inherently problematic. And it particularly after hearing your description, it seems very, it seems like the easiest evaluation to make is that, yeah, it's doomed, but it's a venerable tradition. You know, it goes back to, at least to, you know, Shankara's beautiful hymns of devotion to the guru, and there's a whole tradition of, you know, there are techniques in the Vajrayana of what's called guru yoga, where the guru becomes the vehicle, the object of meditation, and so forth. So I'm just trying to sort this out.
If there is an object of meditation, there is a subject of meditation.
Well, but objects are...
However noble the object of meditation is, it maintains the subject of meditation. You cannot have one side of a coin. You can't have an object without a subject.
Right. I think when objects of meditation are used skillfully, they're seen as temporary. They're seen as on-ramps. As on-ramps. I don't know if you use that expression in England.
What's that in English?
It's when you enter a freeway. You know what a freeway is? You know, it's a big highway without stop signs. You drive very fast, but you can't get on. You can't enter it at top speed. So there's a ramp that you go up.
Got it.
And you accelerate.
Okay.
What do you call that? Do they have a word for that?
A slip road.
Okay. So
where you slip into the stream of the.
Yes. Okay. So, in my experience of practice and of teaching, sometimes it's to make the transition from, especially people who have a lot of chaos going on in their inner and outer experience, to go suddenly from a very turbulent situation to just being, to resting in awareness. There needs to be some slip road, some transition in between, and so
how much time do you want to spend on the slip road? You know, you're going from the city to the freeway.
Yeah, the minimum.
Yeah,
the minimum,
the bare minimum. But yeah. In most cases, the slip road becomes the freeway.
Yeah.
And people spend the rest of their life on the slipway.
Yeah.
They never make the freeway.
Yeah.
And in fact, their identity becomes invested in staying on the freeway. Their whole identity becomes wrapped up in their teacher, their tradition. They approached this tradition or this teacher in the first place to be liberated from their attachments. And yet they end up attached to the tradition or the teacher.
Yeah, no,
So
yeah.
I grant you, Dean, I understand what you're saying. I grant you that the transition from the downtown to the freeway involves this intermediary step. And for this reason, it is inevitable that when people approach a teacher, the teacher is usually the last resort. They've tried in the early years of their lives. Most people, not everyone, but most people try substances, activities, relationships, and eventually when all of those have failed, they usually end up in therapy. They spend a fortune in therapy for 10 years, going to see several therapists. When all of those have failed, there's nowhere else to go. And some end up in a monastery. But for many people, the spiritual teaching or the teacher is the last chance. They've tried everything else. That's not the case for everyone, by any means. But this is very often the case. And so people inevitably approach a teacher with high hopes. They think, oh, maybe this teacher or this teaching can finally give me what I sought all these years in objects, substances, activities, states of mind, and relationships. So the teacher or the teaching is seen like the ultimate object that is finally going to do it for us. And okay, I grant you, for a very brief period of time, particularly in our age, in our era, when we don't live in a very hierarchical society, where we don't just automatically respect our elders and our betters. We are taught from a very early age to be questioning, to be discerning, not just to do what our parents and teachers told us to do. Particularly in this age, I feel that the teacher, yes, should be willing to receive this projection, but should be skillful and should turn that projection around and deliver it back to the place for which it truly seeks, which is the essential being of the seeking person. And that, if the teacher, in my opinion, if the teacher is a good teacher, that process will not take long. If he or she is skillful and loving and efficient, there is no need to spend long on the slip road.
Is your sense that the venerable historic tradition of where there's a lot of veneration of the guru, where that seems to have been a bigger part of the path, was that perhaps just more suitable to an age of a more hierarchical age?
I think
where
so.
we had kings.
Yes, I think so. You see, also in these cultures and in those cultures and times, a lot of people who approached the teacher were not educated. So that is why the teaching is often given in stories and parables. So the teaching always accommodates itself to the age in which it arises and tailors itself to the level of understanding of the people that approach the teaching. I'm not implying that you need to be have a highly sophisticated or refined intellect to take this direct path approach. Not at all. But you need to have a clear mind. And nothing that has been said here these last few days requires any high level. Well, it does require a high level of intelligence, but it's not an educated intelligence. Someone without a high school or a college education could perfectly easily understand everything that is being spoken here. But that is what I call real intelligence. It's not educated intelligence. So I feel that this age and this time and this place is now ripe for this direct approach. I think this is the age of the direct path. Even in those traditions, the more progressive paths, they were only considered preparations for the direct path. In those traditions, it was considered necessary to undergo a series of purifying practices that progressively purified the mind and the body until it was considered sufficiently mature to hear the highest teaching. In this approach, we take a different approach. The highest teaching is given straight away. It doesn't matter what the condition of your body and your mind. If you ask yourself the question, am I aware? And then pause and try to find the answer, you will go directly to the experience of being aware. What preparation do you need for that? You see, even in these traditions where the guru was venerated, we just hear the stories about these traditions. But if you were really in one of those traditions and very close to the teacher, anyone who, for instance, was very close to Ramana Maharshi, he never encouraged people to devote themselves to him physically. When he was dying and people were crying around him, he looked at them bewildered and said, "Why are you all crying? I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going to leave you. You are mistaking me for a body." He couldn't understand why after all these years, all his devotees were still mistaking him for a body, when all he had said all along is, I am your very own self. I am the very being which knows itself in each one of you as I am. So these, Ramana Maharshi never asked people to devote themselves to him physically. Now, I don't mean to suggest that there isn't great love and respect towards the teacher, but there is equal love and respect towards the so-called student. They are on a level, in fact. I feel even the terms teacher and student are not quite appropriate. It is a relationship of friendship, of mutual love and respect. I was talking many years ago with Francis on a retreat, and we were talking about intimate relationships, ordinary, romantic, intimate relationships. And we had a conversation about that. He said for there to be a true intimacy in a relationship, in an ordinary relationship, there can be no hierarchy. We all know that. But then he looked at me and said, and Rupert, that is true. Francis was like God incarnate to me when I first met him. I came to him with all the usual projections. And of course he sensed this. He knew me well. And he looked at me at a certain point in this, after saying this comment about having no intimacy, having no hierarchy in intimate relationship, and he said, and Rupert, that is true of the relationship between a student and a teacher. And at that moment, my relationship started to change with him. There was no less love or respect. I'm not suggesting that it's not natural for there to be mutual love and respect in this relationship. But he came off the pedestal. And our relationship became one of friendship. I still asked him questions from time to time. He said to me once, a good teacher is like a slippery fish. Not sure that I would have used that image, but you get the idea. You can never get hold of it. A teacher is never a place where you can invest your identity, and a good teacher will always slip out from underneath your grasp if you try to make him or her an object. So I would be wary of teachers that pull for personal devotion, not for true devotion. Personal devotion to me is simply attachment. The true devotion is devotion to the absolute reality of our experience. Call it God's infinite being, call it the heart, the self, I, presence. Doesn't matter what we call it, but it is the impersonal, intimate reality of all experience. That is all that is worth being devoted to, and in fact all it is possible to be devoted to.
Thank you. It's very helpful.